question 2, at your university, student affairs are very centralized and control many facets such as Greek life, student involvement, athletics, etc. I can describe student affairs in the UK in a very brief nutshell, but that kind of really requires a course, to be honest, because again, it depends on every institution, as it does in the US. So the biggest difference I feel when it comes to student affairs / the student experience is a lot of what in the US comes under the student affairs umbrella in the UK is organized by student unions, and by law a student union has to exist by the Education Act, and that can be in various shapes or forms, but they are considered independent of the college of the university, and they are run by elected student officers, often called sabbaticals, and they are also charities, so they are governed by charity law. So for instance, I work in a students' union at Imperial. I'm the interim head of student experience there, which means under our umbrella of the union comes all things to do with student organizations, as you call them. We call it student activities generally. Some of the sport and athletics falls under that. Student development, anything to do with workshops, training, developing yourself, success, etc. falls under that. We have bars, we have venues, we have rooms, spaces, our own small cinema, that falls under there. We have our own marketing and communications team to really have close communications with the students. Our own finance team sits within that as well. We also have an education and welfare team that really looks at the welfare of the students, and that could be done through campaigning, through representation, mainly in different forms and shapes, and democracy as well, because all of this is underpinned by the fact that students have a voice, whether that's through voting, whether that's through committees. So student government, so to say, that falls under there too. And we also have an advice centre. Pretty much every union I know has that, which if a student has been alleged of any academic misconduct or perhaps needs advice on their international status or has issues with landlords, they can come to us for advice, and we will either signpost them or we will represent them to the union, to the university in their case, in a way that maybe a solicitor would do, but obviously that's all free and confidential. So we have a fairly big union for the country, and a lot of unions are affiliated to the National Union of Students, which is an umbrella body. Could kind of compare a little bit to ACUI. The difference is it's all run by students. There's obviously staff like me who are full-time employed, and we work with those students for them to achieve their goals and aims and manifestos. But really, the crux is that they are part of the trustee board of that organisation. The National Union of Students represents around 8 million student voices in this country. So it's actually really powerful. I would suggest you to read up on some of the background of that, the history and the future of it, because that has been in the news of late. So those to me are probably the biggest differences in the way it's been organized, so to say, structurally. Student affairs is a term that actually isn't used as much. Some departments use student affairs to name their department, but mainly it's student services. Now, you may have learned in school or in university that student affairs is different to student services, and it is in the US, but here I wouldn't consider that it is. So it's not very admin based really. Student services here comprise of a variety, again depending on the institution, between providing disability services, providing student life advice generally. Sport often comes under that, career services, some registry support could fall under that too. It really, really depends on how it's structured. Now, you may have experience of student affairs being very centralized. That's not the case in every US institution, I would argue, either, and neither is it here. So it could be, for instance, that in the case of Imperial, we have a centralized student services department, but that's very low resourced actually. That's because in each department of the college, as an academic department, there are also student affairs types folks there to help students locally, because our students really identify with the course that they or the program that they study, and the specific college that they belong to, rather than the overarching umbrella of the university.